The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
Happens when a smug TV host collides with a governor who looks like he's still trying to find his car keys in a Walmart parking lot. You get Greg Gutfeld shredding Tim Walz into pieces so small you'd need a microscope and a hazmat suit to pick them up. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a demolition derby wrapped in a stand-up special, with Gutfeld steering the bulldozer while Walz stumbled in front of it like a man holding a kazoo at a rock concert. Every line hit harder than the last.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
And the only thing more painful than Walz's approval numbers was watching him try to keep up with the roast. Oh, Tim Walz. If political leadership were a buffet, he'd be the lukewarm mashed potatoes nobody wanted but still somehow ended up on everyone's plate. Tasteless, forgettable, and regrettable. And then comes Greg Gutfeld, wielding sarcasm like a chainsaw in a fireworks factory, tearing through Walz's blunders with the precision of a surgeon and the chaos of a raccoon in your kitchen at 3 a.m. This isn't governing. It's performance art gone horribly wrong. Think finger painting with spoiled mayonnaise. Messy, stinking, and impossible to forget.
He exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, 0.2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
If you're enjoying this beatdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next, because Walz's leadership makes reality TV look like Shakespeare. Running Minnesota under Walz is like watching a substitute teacher try to control a classroom of caffeinated raccoons while holding a copy of Leadership for Dummies upside down. His playbook is basically one sticky note that just says feelings, and somehow that's the entire strategy. The result? Turning the land of 10,000 lakes into the land of 10,000 disasters.
Saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to break a sweat. Roasting Walz is like dunking on a guy who showed up to a job interview wearing Crocs and a blindfold. Walz walked onto the political stage armed with a kazoo, a glue stick, and a participation ribbon. He practically begged for it, serving up his failures on a silver platter marked extra crispy and whispering, "Please finish me off." At this point, it's not political satire. It's competitive sarcasm.
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
You know, he called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, my house is being surrounded by people with American flags. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He said, I think they're going to attack me. This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, how do you know? There were about 15,000. He said, could you put out a word like that I'm your friend? I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before Truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement. He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side. I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
And Walz? He's the guy who signed up for a heavyweight fight, but showed up with a pool noodle. Let's start with the economy. Because nothing screams leadership like driving businesses out of your state faster than a Black Friday crowd rushing the doors at Walmart. Inflation? Skyrocketing. Jobs? Evaporating. Small businesses? Running for South Dakota like it's a tax-free promised land. Walz looked at all that and thought, you know what would fix this? More taxes. Tax the air, tax the smiles, tax the thought of moving to a better state. Under Walz, the only things growing are government paperwork and the headaches of the middle class. Gutfeld skewered it perfectly. How do you make California look like a capitalist paradise in comparison? Easy, just follow Walz's blueprint. He's the guy who can burn toast with the toaster unplugged, now onto crime. Tim Walz treats public safety the way a toddler treats matches, optimistic, clueless, and guaranteed to end in sirens. His grand strategy? Blame society, light a scented candle, and pray criminals are moved by interpretive dance. That's like handing out marshmallows at a forest fire and calling it prevention.
On the same bad cocaine, but Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the pod. He's a clown without a circus.
He doesn't even need makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for?
Yeah.
I'll watch your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months from now.
Gutfeld had a field day, comparing Walz's crime plan to a mall cop trying to stop a riot with a kazoo. He basically held up a map of Minnesota with "Here be carjackings" written across the Twin Cities. If Walz were in charge of national security, we'd all be speaking Russian by next Tuesday, and then comes education, a glittering dumpster fire that keeps burning no matter how much taxpayer money you dump on it. Walz, once a teacher, somehow thought the best way to help kids was to replace math and science with spot the microaggression. 101. Forget reading comprehension. Kids are now experts in building safe spaces out of popsicle sticks. Gutfeld didn't just mock it, he annihilated it. The only exam students are acing is how to be offended in record time. Schools under Walz look less like learning institutions and more like bad improv theaters. Detention is gone, replaced by TikTok therapy circles and group chants about equity. It's less education and more performance art with taxpayer funding. And who can forget the COVID fiasco? Walz treated the pandemic like his audition for America's next top authoritarian. Shut down everything. Drag bar owners to court. Fine churches. But protests? Oh, those were suddenly essential. Apparently the virus had a political filter. Grandma's bingo night? Shut it down. Street protests with papier-mâché puppets and Marxist chants. Full steam ahead. That wasn't public health. It was political theater with a clipboard. Gutfeld ripped the hypocrisy apart like a raccoon tearing open a trash bag. Walz turned Minnesota into a case study in double standards, and Gutfeld made sure every ounce of absurdity was exposed. Then came the budget surplus. Minnesota had so much extra cash, even Walz couldn't pretend it wasn't there. And instead of giving it back to the people who actually earned it, the taxpayers, he blew it like monopoly money at a government garage sale. More bureaucracy, more diversity consultants, maybe even a taxpayer-funded mural of himself gazing into the distance like he's pondering equity over oat milk. Gutfeld practically keeled over laughing. Walz blowing a surplus is like handing a toddler a credit card and telling him to only buy the essentials. Spoiler. Those essentials included an executive yoga retreat and a shiny espresso machine for the Department of Overregulation. Under Walz, red tape isn't just paperwork, it's a full contact sport. And then there's his strange man crush on Gavin Newsom. Walz clings to California's governor like a fanboy at a boy band reunion, desperate to make Minneapolis into San Francisco's colder, clumsier cousin. Newsom sets California on fire with bad policies, and Walz says, "Perfect. Let's add frostbite and higher taxes." It's like watching someone copy homework from the dumbest kid in class. Gutfeld didn't hold back. If Gavin Newsom is a shampoo ad with the ego of a Bond villain, then Tim Walz is the understudy who wandered in halfway through and started improvising in Pig Latin. Walz struts like the confused love child of Bernie Sanders and a malfunctioning traffic light, tripping over every agency he touches. Transportation? Don't get me started. Walz pitched a multi-million-dollar bullet train that might be finished around the time dinosaurs come back. Meanwhile, Minnesota's roads look like a Mario Kart course after an apocalypse. Drivers aren't commuting, they're surviving. But Walz is too busy selling fantasy trains like he's auditioning for Hogwarts, while real infrastructure crumbles like gluten-free toast. Gutfeld rolled his eyes so hard you could hear them. Brilliant plan, Tim. Let's pour billions into Elon Musk fanfiction on rails. Nothing says fiscal genius like a train to nowhere that's slower than standing in line at the DMV. And then, the media appearances. Watching Walz explain policy is like seeing a raccoon try to do Morse code with oven mitts. Chaotic, confusing, and somehow convinced it's making sense. He drones on in circles like a GPS stuck on recalculating. Somewhere offstage, his advisors are waving flashcards, begging him to land on a coherent point. But no, Walz pirouettes from crime to bike lanes, from inflation to gender-neutral parking lots, as if word salad is a governing strategy. Gutfeld shredded it like a drunken poet at open mic night. It wasn't just awkward, it was verbal gymnastics no one asked for, and then comes the branding. Walz loves to act like a down-home farm dad, but his idea of roughing it is drinking almond milk without a paper straw. He's the guy who shows up to a tailgate with kombucha and kale chips, asking if the brisket is ethically sourced. Gutfeld roasted him mercilessly. Walz is about as folksy as tofu at a monster truck rally. Rural Minnesota wanted a leader who understood real life, tractors, potlucks, church on Sunday. Instead, they got a man who thinks rural life begins at the edge of a bike lane and ends at a kombucha tap. And the knockout line? Gutfeld crowned him the IKEA governor. He comes in a box, half the screws missing, and no matter how you put it together, you end up with a wobbly mess that collapses under pressure. Walz governs like he's running a Pinterest board, hashtags, oat milk, and interpretive dance masquerading as policy. Minnesota deserves more than a glorified group project in khakis. But under Walz, that's exactly what they've got. By the end, Gutfeld turned Walz's oatmeal-flavored governance into a pile of soggy mediocrity. Every bloated bill, every sanctimonious sermon, every incoherent speech was dismantled with sarcasm sharp enough to cut steel. And the saddest part? Walz probably walked away thinking he'd just delivered a TED Talk tribute. Behind that fleece vest and passive-aggressive grin stands a governor who's basically reading expired IKEA instructions, confused, underwhelming, and missing half the screws. Minnesota deserves better. But thanks to Greg Gutfeld, at least we can laugh while Walz keeps fumbling through his own disaster reel.